a lecture on application of digital technologies for wheat recognition and management. We have very eminent speaker, Dr. Muthukumar Bagavathiannan. He is a Belly Turner Professor of Agronomy at the Department of Soil and Crop Sciences, Texas A&M University, Texas. He conducted his postdoctoral research in area of weed biology and herbicide resistance modeling at the University of Arkansas. Prior to his appointment as an assistant professor at Texas University in 2014, he received his PhD at University of Manitoba, Canada, and MS in plant genetic manipulation at the University of Nottingham, England. MSc from Tamil Nadu Agriculture University and BSc from again Tamil Nadu Agriculture University. So sir's research interest fall within the broader area of wheat science and systems agronomy with the aim of improving the efficiency and productivity of agronomic cropping system in US and internationally. In particular, he uses digital technologies and precision tools to improve the efficiency of various agricultural inputs. He has many awards in his credit, like in 2023, he got AgriLife Vice Chancellor Award for Excellence in Research. 2021 Southern Wheat Science Society Outstanding Young Scientist Award, 2020 Wheat Science Society of America Outstanding Early Career Researcher Award, and many more. So thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. Now I invite Dr. Bagavathiannan, sir, for his talk. Sir.
Thank you, Doctor, and my apologies this morning. I got mixed up with the time difference. I thought it's Friday morning instead of Thursday morning, and Dr. Choudhary, my apologies, sincere apologies. So sorry for keeping you waiting. And I believe, yes, I believe there's only 45 minutes. I'll try to make it brief so you don't have to stay longer. Okay, first of all, thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you all and share some work that we do here in Texas regarding the use of precision technologies for weed recognition and management. Let me share my slide deck. We can go through these real quick. Okay. Do you see my slides? I can do full screen. Let me see. Do you see my screen? I may have to change.
Change is split.
Yeah, the settings. Okay.
Yes.
Is it good now? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So I'm kind of jumping into the topic quick. I mean, most of you might already know, what is precision ag in general and why it is important. Like there are a lot of developments these days in sensor technologies, in drones and ground platforms, and machine learning algorithms and cloud computing, edge computing. So all these possibilities are really making precision weed control a reality, right? So these were dreamed upon several years ago. Now there are commercial units being sold by companies like Blue River John Deere, and there are a lot of other robotic companies, as well as drone companies like DJI that you might be familiar with. There are, several other commercial platforms available with the aim of, applying weed management technologies in a more site-specific and precision manner. And with all these, what we really need is the precise recognition of the weed species in question, right? So in a cropping situation, we have multiple species in a mix. We have the crop that we planted, and then we have different kinds of weeds, right? To do a species level management, in this case, let's say if we want to just save the crop and spray everything else that is not the crop, then we need to recognize what is the crop, right? But if you wanted to go down to a species level within weeds, so let's say you have a broadleaf weed, you have sedge, and you have a grass weed, or mixes of different grass weeds. You want to use different products or different methods of control on different weed species. You might want to use a mechanical method on a certain weed that is not effectively controlled with a herbicide. You might be using a different herbicide for a sedge species compared to a grass species. So it would be good to have that flexibility to use multiple tools, again, in a precise manner. So this is where species level recognition is extremely important, which, sometimes you can do that with simple technology. I will get to that in a second. And, can go anywhere from, the reflectance-based indices all the way to machine learning based models. So, okay, so first we know why it's important to recognize weeds, because for species level identification and site-specific management. And it's not only for just managing the weeds, right? Knowing what species we have can also be very helpful for better understanding weed crop interactions. If you're a weed science researcher, you want to understand, the biomass production of the weeds. So if you want to understand yield reduction, competition, and any other, biological interactions, um, using these tools can be very valuable, even as simple as, if you want to count the seedling emergence in the fields, right? So you can take an image and do some image processing to recognize individual species and count how many seedlings you have per each species. So there are so many different applications of using these weed recognition technologies, not just for the management, right? Better characterizing the weed infestations, better, the crop-weed interactions and other research questions. So this can be very valuable for weed researchers. Okay, so I strongly encourage each of you to think about how can we use these sensor technologies and recognition for better characterizing the weed biology or weed crop interaction. So that can be a very valuable tool. And when it comes to management specifically, there are two major platforms that are used. One is ground sprays, right? So ground platforms could be a small robot, or it could be a regular tractor mounted sensor and sprayer suit. So that's pretty common as well. And then the second part is the drone-based aerial applications. There are different variants of drones, and you have fixed wing drones, and so you have rotary wing drones, which is pretty common when it comes to herbicide applications, the ones that, with the rotors. And there are also, manned aircrafts, helicopters and fixed wings that are also, have been used for a long time. But the drones, like smaller unmanned vehicles, are even more popular because of the convenience and scalability. Okay, so for detecting weeds, as I mentioned, there are different approaches depending on what species we are targeting and what specific circumstances. Um, Sometimes just a simple vegetation index like RGB based recognition can be sufficient. Sometimes multispectral would be great. More the better, but hyperspectral may not be necessary. Okay. It's always good to have more bands because that can always give you additional information. But for some use cases, just a regular RGB image that you take with a cell phone or in your drone, take an RGB image that might be sufficient for detecting obvious differences. For example, if you look at this picture here, there is a there are different types of weeds in a rice crop. This is a late stage, we call late season weed escapes. So you can clearly see some species like sprangle top. It's flowering and it has like a white seed head, very easy to detect. And we have Hemsesbania right here. That is a pale green in color compared to the rice crop. Again, very easy to detect using an RGB sensor because if you do excess green or some kind of color thresholding, um, it will show the difference because visually you can tell there are big reflectance or color differences. Now, even in the same mix, we have bonnier grass, okay, Echinoclova, which is really hard to see in this image, and it's extremely difficult to recognize bonnier grass in a rice crop using vegetation indices. So those are, some great examples of use cases where simple RGB might be sufficient to recognize some weeds, but not all weeds. Okay. So we really have to look at, what is our weed in question? What is the, what is that we try to accomplish, and then choose what approach will be useful. Some other methods that are commonly used include canopy height model. Okay, so this utilizes the fact that some weeds grow taller than the crop canopy, right? So rice, we know that our crops are pretty uniform in height, and when the weed escapes are tall, like Hemsesbania or the sprangle tops, these are all very tall growing species, and there is a significant height difference. So you can actually detect the height differences using a canopy height model or using a depth camera, and and then you can tell wherever there is a vegetation that's taller than the crop canopy, that's a weed. You can use a LiDAR to do the same thing, for height detection. But when, none of these are feasible or effective for certain weed species, like I said, the bonnier grass in a rice crop, then we really need to utilize some modern approaches like machine learning and neural networks. Okay. Hope this gives you an idea of, how the different strategies for weed recognition are chosen. Now, let's say you have a field with multiple weed species, and you obviously need to manage all of them. So should you use like different methods for different species? Again, it really depends, but maybe if you have to use machine learning for some species anyways, maybe you're better off doing that for all the species, but then you need models developed to recognize those species. I'll get to that in a second. So that will be a trade-off that you have to keep in mind. Okay, so speaking of machine learning, an important requirement for that is training a model to recognize individual species, right? It's no different than, if you're training a graduate student to recognize weed species. What do? We are showing different growth stages of a weed. Let's say you have bonnier grass, you sow the seedling of bonnier grass, and then at multiple growth stages, multiple times. So the student, when they look at bonnier grass, they immediately recognize it is bonnier grass, right? So that learning happens with multiple iterations of multiple examples. It's kind of a similar analogy that you do with machine learning. What you do is we take a lot of images of individual weeds, and so there is a protocol for training models, and you do that with more images of more variants of images of that particular species. So this is why, higher the diversity of images you show of these weeds or utilize those in the machine learning process, higher the robustness and accuracy of detection. Because again, for human learning, let's say you see one biotype of bonnier grass and you learned how bonnier grass looks, And let's say you get another biotype from a different country or maybe a completely different region that looked phenotypically different, we may struggle to identify whether it is bonnier grass or maybe another grass species that might look similar, right? The same thing applies to machine learning. We have to, in the training process, we have to include more diverse images. So, and different growth stages, different phenotypes, then the machine learning model becomes more robust and highly accurate. So where do we get the images from, right? We need a lot of images, hundreds, if not thousands, for each species. Not just the number of images, but also diverse range of images, as I indicated. So where do we get them? So we can actually go and plant them in pots or image them, go to the field, image them to develop a repository that we can use for training models. So in the US, we are currently working on a national weed image repository. It has two phases. One is semi-field image collection, where we actually plant known weed and crop species in pots. And as they emerge, we start imaging multiple times a week and during multiple growth stages. And we have an interesting pipeline which annotates the plant species automatically. We don't have to manually annotate, which is a very cumbersome, expensive, and laborious process. With this pipeline, the images, as they come in, we know exactly what species were planted in these pots, and we eliminate occlusion by thinning them out, so we can immediately, take cutouts and assign labels to each of these species. So this is the pipeline that we have. And this is the version 2 of this gantry for, again, high throughput imaging of weeds and cash crops and cover crops. So this particular system that you're seeing is, at NC State University. We have a similar one in Texas for image collection. And then the second part of this activity is field image collection. So we go to the field, put tarps around each weed of interest, and then take images. So the idea is to, again, automate the annotation process. Since we eliminate other vegetation in the background, it's easy to take a cutout automatically and then assign labels to them. So that's the pipeline for semi-field image collection. Sorry, field image collection. And we also take images of crop rows. So we don't do individual plants of crops, but we take rows. Again, the idea is to take cutouts of the sections of rows that, then you can put them together into a synthetic image of fields. Okay, so this is a pipeline in a nutshell, real quick. The images come in, and so we have each image recognized based on its location, and we know what we planted, and then these images are processed to get cutouts, and then we have the labeled synthetic data, and we end up with the semantic labels of individual weeds. These are the collaborators in this project. It's led by USDA ARS in Beltsville, and also the NC State University is a key player in this project. We also collaborate with our host university in Denmark. Okay, I do want to introduce you to a more global activity in image collection and curation and sharing. So this is called International Weed Recognition Consortium, or IWRC. You can scan this QR code, or you can go to the website to learn more about this initiative. So the idea is to provide technical support to whoever wants to collect images, because we have established protocols, and we provide support as well. If they have questions on equipment, or if you run into any technical issues, we provide support. The idea is to help collect images of these different weed species, because that's a very foundational resource, right? Because once for a lot of these computer vision applications, we need a good image data set for all these important weed species. So with that in mind, we are providing this support. This is a global consortium. A lot of individuals are involved. I mean, these are some of the objectives. You can see the map of folks who are participating in this consortium. Some are more active than others. We have Dr. Mishra and Dr. Choudhary, Dr. Saab involved in this activity in India, and so this is a it will require a lot of coordination, as well as like multiple uh, regions can start image collection. So once if you have interest, you can like use our protocol and support to collect image data sets. They can then be like arranged into a common place. Right now we have standardized metadata. So if everyone is utilizing that, then it's very easy to, once it's easy to coordinate parallel activities for image collection. Currently, our colleagues in Brazil, they're very active in image collection. They just started the semi-field and field image collection. The Canadian colleagues have, they already have a huge image data set and continuing. And also in Australia, Dr. Bahira Chauhan had joined this initiative from Queensland, and his team is starting image collection shortly. So again, so this is a global consortium, and the overall idea is to help collect these image resources. Will be useful for not only for those specific countries, but also others. For example, barnyard grass, it's just not, it's a global weed, right? So it's present in pretty much every single rice production region. So the more the diversity, more data we use for training, we can really have much robust uh, training models. So that's the overall idea. And once we have these image cutouts, we can, that gives us a lot of flexibility in what we can do with it in terms of creating different scenes and scenarios for model training. A process called synthetic image generation or image synthesis is going to be very useful. So in this slide, you can see how it is done. Once you have an image cut out, and you can take a soil background, and you can place the crops and weeds in different combinations. Okay, so let's say I want to train a model to recognize morning glory in a cotton crop. Okay, when it's mixed with, or like different weed species in a cotton crop, that's a combination of grasses and some broadleaf weeds and some sedges. So if you really need those images, the conventional method would be you go to the field, plant a cotton crop, and plant other weed species that you want in required densities, right? So if you want a low density situation, you have to thin them out. If you have a high density, you have to, plant at higher densities, maintain those densities. It's a lot of work, right? And it's a lot of work, a lot of labor, very expensive, and sometimes it's very difficult to establish those desired densities. It's very difficult. So with image synthesis, what you can do is we can choose the soil background of interest. We can place the crop row, right? You can see the cotton row, and then you can place the weeds in different combinations, whatever densities that we want, right? So we can actually create the whole field situation in the computer without even having to go to the field. So that is the real benefit of image synthesis. And we can generate a lot of variations as well. If you want to simulate nitrogen deficiency, you can play with the color, right? So you can rotate the individual cutouts and, maybe have a different angle, different camera angle, so things like that. So there are a lot of variations we can introduce to help improve the model training and accuracy. Another approach is virtual fields or three-dimensional virtual fields. I need to credit one of my PhD students, Ching Song Hugh, who actually developed this, where we can generate a 3D virtual field of your crop of interest. So this one is cotton. We can generate this for different growth stages of cotton. We can change the soil type. So this is more sandy loam. And if you want a clay soil, we can generate different soil moisture conditions. We can generate different weed combinations. We can generate different cloudy, lighting conditions. And with that, we can take cross sections for training our models. Again, this is another way to augment images for model training and introduce variability. So this is really a neat approach that can help. See, like can have like different shading or cloudy, all different scenarios that can be introduced into model training to improve our accuracy. GANs, or generative adversarial networks, are so these are basically generative AI. I mean, we use generative AI more commonly these days. I mean, ChatGPT is a generative AI, right? So I mean, it can generate content for you. Similar way, we can utilize generative AI to simulate variations, or not similar, but to generate variations of images for the species of interest. And if you want morning glory, different variants of morning glory pictures, you just provide some raw images, and within, certain parameter boundaries, this generative AI can actually generate new images of these weeds. I mean, that's again another resource to take advantage of for augmenting our image needs for model training. Okay, here are some other applications that we are doing with model, training. I mean, you can train weed seeds, right? So there are some applications for weed seed detection, especially if you want to identify seed contamination in crop seed, weed seed contamination in crop seeds, or there could be, other applications of identifying the weed seed. So you can train a model. Seedling emergence quantification. I think I mentioned some time ago, we can use images to count what, individual number of seedlings per each species. Okay, so if you want to do it conventionally, so you have to go there and manually count each species. That's very time consuming and laborious. Whereas, if you just take an image, you train the model to recognize these species. So the image on the right is the processed image. Okay, that was based on a machine learning model trained on these images. Now we have individual species labeled with different colors, right? So each color represents a different species. Now we can count how many individuals are present in each of that species or each of that color. And I want you to pay attention to that little orange color plants. So these are actually prostrate spurge. The spurge plants with tiny leaves, very small plants. In this raw image, it's even very hard to notice. Okay, but machine learning, so it's pretty powerful to recognize even those tiny weeds. So it's very useful. And another application includes quantification of weed seed production from uncontrolled weed escapes. So this is a very simple scenario where we have soybean crop that is ready to be harvested, right? It's all turned brown. but our weeds are still green and so it's maturing. So this is common water hemp, Amaranthus tuberculatus. But essentially what we are demonstrating here is the ability to recognize the weed and quantify seed production, approximate seed production from these plants. And that way we can kind of estimate how much seed can actually go to the soil seed bank and create heat maps like this. And the farmer can use this information either to, create awareness and maybe just go and do something to manage it right now, or come back next spring and change the herbicide pre-emergence herbicide strategies so that you can have a better control on these hotspots. So that was the idea. There's a great value in understanding weed escapes and the seed production potential from these. Again, weed recognition can be very helpful for these applications. Another one is detecting herbicide symptomology. So this is a study we are, so one of my PhD students just wrapped up his dissertation. So he was looking at, like detecting weed, not weed, but herbicide symptomology on cotton that's coming from different herbicide modes of action, because we wanted to know, are there unique signatures from like applications of these different herbicide modes of action that can be recognized with sensors. So we used RGB sensors, multispectral and thermal sensors to recognize that. And another question here is, the first one, can you recognize what herbicide had caused the injury? And number two, can we estimate potential yield loss so we can, help make some decisions as to, should we, you know, replant the crop, or should we continue to let the crop grow and maybe accept some yield loss? So those kind of decisions farmers have to make. And if you're able to make some assessments of crop level of injury and crop yield reduction, then that information is going to be very useful for the growers. So this is an approach that we are applying. So another PhD student, Bishmar Anoche, so he's using a technique called sensor fusion, basically using data from multiple sensors. He's using RGB sensor and thermal data, fuse them together to get more information regarding crop stress response after application of the herbicide. So then we can use that to see if that's giving differentiation among different herbicide mode of action. Okay, so now we are kind of shifting gears into 3D based recognition of plants, mainly with the aim of biomass estimation and also trait characterization of plant species for crops, weeds, and crop weed interactions. Okay, so the conventional method is using 2D images, right? Or it's a manual. So if you want to measure biomass, what do we do? We just go harvest the plant and put them in a dryer, dry them and weigh them. So that's how we estimate biomass, right? But yeah, it's accurate, but it's it's very difficult to do on a large scale. Very expensive, again, laborious. It's almost impossible to do it for large field sizes. So with these imaging techniques, especially with the 3D approaches, we can get a much better estimation of biomass and also measure different traits like plant height and number of bolls or yield estimation. They're all very possible. Let me play this video so you can see what we do here. Okay, so this is a small plot of cotton reconstructed with a technique called 3D Gaussian splatting. So what it does is, well, the raw image is a video taken from this little robot that was going inside the cotton field. It's an RGB video, regular video, and then through image processing, we can get a 3D reconstructed plot or field like this. And then with this, we can actually count how many cotton balls we have. We can, like estimate yield from this. We can count the plant height, number of leaves, and what have you. So that's the power of like 3D approaches like this. And we're also trying to do that for overall biomass estimation of cover crops, right? So cover crops, it's a different concept in the US. These are crops that are mainly grown between two crops. Okay, so if you have a summer crop and the field is going to remain fallow until the next crop is planted in the following spring. Okay, so during that time, a crop is or could be planted what is called cover crops to take advantage of the residual nitrogen resources, but also provide soil cover and other benefits, weed suppression and water retention, reducing erosion, and all those things. Okay, so the idea is if you know how much biomass is produced in a certain area from these cover crops, we can predict weed suppression potential. We can predict how much nitrogen is added to the soil. That can help adjust the management strategies for the next crop. We can reduce the nitrogen application or we can reduce the herbicide application, or you're seeing some gaps in the cover crop establishment in certain regions. So we can actually be a little more aggressive with the weed management in those areas because we know that there are a lot of gaps and there'll be more weeds coming up due to poor suppression from the cover crops. So we can actually make such variable decisions surrounding variable rate applications of different inputs to make it more efficient. So with that idea, Joe Johnson's another PhD student. He is originally from India also, and he is developing, he actually compared different methods for the biomass estimation using 3 different sensors. One is an RGB video using a GoPro sensor, and then the second one is a LiDAR, which generates point clouds. And then the third one is a stereoscopic depth camera. So it's OAK-D is the name of the camera, Luxonics brand. So that's what we used. So you can also see this here. This is part of another project, the national network, the PSA, where we are trying to calibrate these approaches by taking, the cover crop biomass from multiple locations. So we use that as a data to calibrate our sensors. Okay, so once we have this ability to generate 3D images of plants and whatever object that we have in question, now we can actually utilize that for understanding weed crop interactions in pot experiments. So this is a study that's being carried out by another student, and we use this 3D Gaussian splatting technique to reconstruct the images, and now we can actually automatically measure the plant height, number of leaves, the length of the seed head, and so on and so forth. So that's a real benefit, and we could also do root trait measurements using this technique. Okay, so we have this is a washed out root of cotton. We can get a 3D reconstruction, a 3D image, and with that we can take data like total root volume, root length, the number of roots, and yeah. So that's all about the recognition. So we covered about like a 2D based plant recognition. We cover the importance of like image data sets and how we do it here in the US to generate a large image repository. And we also touched on the International Video Recognition Consortium. And then we moved on to 3D based, um, recognition and trait measurement. Now, coming into management, so there is there are different platforms available for site-specific managements. As I mentioned earlier, one is the aerial platforms, drones. The second one is ground platforms, right? There could be small ground robots all the way to, like large machines, including, retrofits with existing tractors and spray booms. I want to go through it real quick because I think we're already at 5 o'clock right now. So this is the general workflow where, for any drone-based applications, if you want to do site-specific spraying. If you want to do a blanket broadcast spray, we don't need to recognize the weeds, right? We just go and spray the whole area. That involves a different workflow. So you just have to map the area, and if you want the drone to fly autonomously, that's a path planning, and so there's a different set of techniques utilized. But if you want to recognize individual weed species and spray specifically on those weeds in a site-specific manner, then this particular step is kind of critical. The first step is like recognizing the weeds, right? So we fly the fields with an RGB or multispectral whatever sensor that we wanted to utilize, and then create an orthomosaic and then analyze those images utilizing our detection models. Could be either machine learning or like a simple vegetation index. Identify the locations of the weeds in question, extract the GPS coordinates. In order to be accurate, we have to use RTK GPS. They give sub-centimeter level accuracy, and then create a shape file of these GPS coordinates and load it onto a spray drone and spray that. Okay, so this is the traditional workflow for drone-based site-specific herbicide applications. But as you can imagine, this whole process takes several days, a minimum of 2 days, right? So once the first one, you have to do the imaging flight and get the images, mosaic them, analyze, and then, get everything ready to go and spray these areas. So you need at least a day to get everything. And, under ideal conditions, 1 day lag is not a big deal. But if, let's say if you're in a rainy season and cloudy, windy, it's you may miss critical application timings if you're going to rely on or if there is a lag between imaging and the spray drone operations. So there have been attempts to reduce that gap and do more real-time recognition and spraying, right? So there are some practical challenges to doing the recognition and spray at the same time because of how high you have to fly for recognition for covering large areas compared to how low you have to fly for spraying the individual spots. So and also there is an advantage of once you already have a map, you don't have to like fly every single area of the field. You can just have a path planning to go directly to the weed escapes to make it more efficient, right? And with a spray drone, you have a payload, so it's a chemical you're carrying. So to make it more efficient, it makes more sense just to go to the weed targets and spray, which means you should already have the shapefile or the path planning done before you spray. So that's why not a real-time, but a near real-time detection and spraying can be very useful. So this approach utilizes an onboard image processing. So what we're doing is instead of doing the imaging flight and taking the images, going to the lab to analyze the images in a computer. If we can do all the image processing on board within the drone itself, then it can save a lot of time, right? So instead of a minimum 1 day, all we need is about 30 minutes between the imaging flight and the spraying flight, or maybe an hour, or less than an hour or something. Okay, I don't know if there is any message for me, but Dr. Saab, please let me know if I need to wrap up, or if there are any questions. Please, yeah, feel free to let me know.
So we can
Oh.
take questions. We can take questions from participants. Few questions.
Okay, so let's do that. So let me quickly play this so that you can just see how the spot spraying actually works with this workflow. Okay, so we're just spraying.
Or otherwise you finish.
Yeah, I think we're so this is, I think this pretty much covers, so you can see the like a site specific spraying. You can see the, so I do want to highlight two things. The advantage with like using drone-based application, you can see the downwash, right? So the drone actually moves the plant around. That means there is a higher chance that the herbicide will deposit on the weeds. There is a better coverage, and also we expose the lower side of the leaves. So that is another advantage of drone-based applications. But the limitation could be seen on larger or like taller weeds. Okay, so if the weeds are tall and you have the downwash, then what happens is the plant parts like the tillers or the branches are actually moved away from the target area. So that can lead to poor control. So it's called off centers. So these are some of the challenges compared to a species that is not very tall. So in that case, you get a better control because the off center or the wobbling effect is much less for weeds that are like short. Anyway, so I'll stop here, and I'll be glad to take questions you may have.
So thank you very much, sir. Participants, you can raise your hands if you have any question.
Doctor, meanwhile, you can take the questions from chat box.
Okay, sir. So you can also see in chat box, we have questions regarding this drone application. So after taking imaging of weed species, is it possible to take up spotted application of weedicide, rather whole crop application targeting weed through drones?
Yeah.
Yes, so that is the idea, right? So once we have the areas identified, then we don't need to spray the whole field. And in that study, so Bolaram, who is our ICAR scientist, who is finishing up his PhD in my program, so he did a study in rice, and interestingly, what we found was, especially for those late applications, there is yield protection. If you do a blanket application of herbicides during a reproductive stage, you will expect to see some yield damages, right, or yield reduction or crop damage. Whereas by spot spraying, you minimize that yield loss in the crop. So that's another advantage of using drones for spot spraying, especially at late growth stages.
Okay, thank you, sir. So next, one more question is there. With lots of diversity in cropping pattern in India, along with fragmented lands and dominance of marginal and small farmer, so is it possible to use mechanized site-specific weed management in India?
Right. So the technology is definitely powerful. We have to see what are the specific applications, right? So how it is utilized in countries like US or Australia with the large land sizes, it may not be the same use case, right? But we can use the same technology to fit it to small scale operations. I hope that answers your question. We have to think more creatively as to how to make it to work. So because the challenges can be different in, like so like weed management challenges in the US can be different. How it is dealt with can be different in the US than in India, but the same technologies can be utilized to tailor to our needs in India. So this is where we have to think creatively as to how to make it, practicable. I think that is the right word.
So thank you, sir. If no
Sure.
more question, yeah, we have one participant who has raised hand, Bhagwati MS. She may be allowed to ask. Please unmute yourself. Miss Bhagwati.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Yeah, I
Hello,
think
good afternoon. Yeah.
yeah, your presentation is really like eye-opening to like young career researchers who is thinking this would be not possible in Indian agriculture. I think so. So this technology, which one you explained, is it possible to adapt the farmers in India? I think it would be not be possible. In from my point of view, the research about that AI and algorithm are related to site specification. So if it may not be possible means farmers which practice they may adapt. From your point of view, what you are thinking, which one the farmers can adapt in small farmers like in India, which things they may adapt, sir?
Sure. Thanks for this question. Let me take a different approach to answer this question. So any technology adoption is driven by the needs, right? Nobody is going around and using a technology just because it is available and it is fancy, right? It makes sense, right? So farmers will utilize the technology when it solves a problem and there is a real need, right? So as researchers, we need to think about what are the real problems that farmers have today and how or what type of technologies can help solve that problem, not the other way around, right? It's not like, okay, there are precision technologies available and the field is advancing, and can we just, just give those technologies to the farmers expecting that, they're going to adapt? That's not going to happen, right? It really needs to be needs driven. It needs to solve a problem that they have today. So as research, I don't have a specific example right now, but I'm just telling you, as researchers, we need to kind of change the way how we look at the technology utilization, right? What are the problems our farmers have today, and what type of technologies that are currently available can solve these, and how can we, like modify these technologies, right? How can we tailor these technologies so that it will be practicable to our farmer in, I know, in Haryana or Punjab or in that particular region in question. So that is the important thing we need to think about.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sure.
So we have 2-3 more questions. So one is looking to the diversity, that is 10 to 12 wheat species per square meter of wheat flora in our area. What are the possibility of AI-based wheat management?
Yeah, I mean, when you have very high densities, it well depends on the question. If you want to just you know, spray or control everything under high densities, precision management may not be that useful, right? If your goal is to control every single weed, then you might want to just go ahead and do a blanket spray. And it also points to the fact that precision technologies are more efficient when your seed bank levels are moderate to low, right? So if a farmer is, in a high seed bank situation, they should really focus aggressively on reducing the seed bank size, at least for a few years, before moving on to precision technologies, because that's when you start seeing the savings of herbicide and cost.
So one participant asked, shall we differentiate the weed species from crop nutrient deficiencies
Yes.
color-wise?
Yes, so right, we can. If you're using color thresholding, then it may not be possible. But if you use like machine learning and trained enough images with variations of such factors, yes, we should be able to differentiate crop and weeds even under those conditions.
Okay, so
Thank you.
thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your eye-opening talk. We know these days use of sensor technologies and AI are increasing. Their uses are increasing. So, and you have done great work in these by using these technologies. So thank you for sharing your work and your thoughts with participants. So on behalf of organizer, participants, and on my own behalf, I thank you for your this informative talk. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and my apologies again. Yes, it was. I had to. I just woke up when Dr. called me, so I had to get ready. Sorry again, but I hope it was useful. You learned something, and I strongly encourage you to start using these techniques, right? Even if it is a small component that you want to add to your research project, I think these are very powerful tools. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saab, to see you so early in the morning.
Right. So it's 6:50
Yeah.
and it's not very early, to be
So
I get
sorry
up.
to travel you.
No. It's really not very early, right? So I wake up early, but the thing is I had in my mind I had Friday morning for this seminar, so that's why I wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.